Hey everybody, it's Gary Enerson here. How y'all doing? I hope you had a good week. Welcome to Gary E's Sketch Cards, episode number 39, where this week I am drawing a zombie that I have named Gus. Why did I name him Gus? Well, let me give you a little bit of backstory on this particular project. For those of you that have been paying attention and watching the videos, you know that I spent some time in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago. And I had some free time in the hotel room, so I kind of brought some drawing materials and whatnot and decided that I would try to freehand a couple of zombie heads. I'm a big zombie fan, and I will get into that in a little bit. But I figured that I would try to, I guess, do a drawing where I'm not using just strictly a photo reference, you know what I mean, of a particular actor or character or something like that. Just kind of made these zombie heads up on the fly. I think the only picture I did use was one of like the musculature of the human head. And this is kind of the first time in a while that I've just sort of put the pencil to paper, if you will, and just kind of drawn, you know what I mean? Most of the stuff I do, I usually use like like I said, a photo or something like that. And I kind of draw it, not exact, but I use it as kind of a pretty solid roadmap to complete a piece. And in this case, it was kind of, it was very liberating to just sort of put the pencil to paper, if you will, and just kind of go. The subject matter is, like I said, maybe a bit gruesome or whatever, but I've always been kind of a zombie movie fan and that. So what Gus is just sort of a zombie head that I drew a circle for the skull and just kind of built it up from there. And I got to say, it was pretty liberating. I don't know. I probably didn't get all the anatomy right, obviously, some of the tendons in the neck or whatever. But I think in the end, it turned out great. So I decided that I'd keep it. But yeah, that's kind of the origin, if you will, of Gus. So and I figured I'd share that with you this week. So yeah. The second reason I did Gus and the other zombie heads and stuff that I drew was I'm still experimenting with the markers and whatnot. I've said it before that they're kind of a new medium for me. I like to work in pencils and acrylics and whatnot, but it's always good to kind of just do something that I don't know. I'm really liking working with the markers, and I'm really striving to do a lot more with them. I can get them done relatively quickly and make it look relatively good, except when I'm erasing all the time, which is what I'm doing here. Actually, I'm lightening up the pencil line so I can go in with the markers. In this case, I kind of work from the inside out, if you will. I work, and what that means to me is I work from the light tones out to the darker tones, and darker tones including the outline. So because I found that if I outline the head first and then try to use the markers, it tends to bleed a little bit. The black tends to bleed onto the markers and everything like that. And I may. Obviously, that is an issue with working with alcohol-based markers and ink-based pens and stuff like that. But I found if I do it the other way around, where if I put in the markers first and then outline it, it comes out looking the way I want it to. None of the inks bleed and nothing like that. And I also work from the lighter tones out because again, you don't want to draw some of the darker tones and then try to use the lighter markers on it, because then that starts to bleed onto the lighter markers, and pretty soon they start losing the lightness, I guess, of their ink, or their color value in that. In this case, I'm using the Dick Blick markers. I'm using the cool grays, I believe, and I have the 10, 20, 30, all the way up to 100% black gray tones in that. So that's what I'm using here. And I kind of like to, it's not going to look structured as you're watching it, because I'm just sort of picking and choosing which tones I go with. That's all a part of my process, I guess. And whether it's correct or incorrect, or, whether I'm causing any of the true marker artists or sketch card artists or whatever to kind of roll their eyes and pick their jaws up off the floor. In the end, it comes out looking okay. And what I really need to do is actually watch a few more instructional videos on how to use the markers and get more familiar with that. Something else I need to do too, and I bought a couple of books on it and have looked at a few tutorials, or bookmarked them, I should say, online. Is working with light values. Light values are a little bit more of a difficult thing for me. I've always kind of gone by sort of instinct and gone that way. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But, it's better if you actually know what you're doing, I guess. So maybe I should kind of learn how to do it properly. But yeah, in the end, I've always said, hey, always keep learning, always keep, refining your craft and learning new things and stuff, So that's my goal for 2016. So I've always been a zombie fan, as I said before. I'll give a little bit of history, my zombie history, as it were. I think it was about 1985 or 86. I would have been about 15, 16 years old at the time. I had a VCR because that's what you used back then. And because my family had HBO, that I could, record stuff off of HBO and watch it later. And one of the movies that came out on HBO was the original Dawn of the Dead. And I was kind of in a horror movie kick at the time. I was watching, all the typical, horror movies that had come out that time: Friday the 13th, Carrie, Nightmare on Elm Street, and stuff like that. And I'd heard about Dawn of the Dead from an old magazine called Fangoria magazine, and I decided I would give it a shot. And by the way, side note, this is where I'm starting with the black marker to outline everything. So I decided to record Dawn of the Dead, and at the time I had no idea what the movie was about. I just knew that they were zombies, and they were the dead coming back to life and all this and all that. And I had no real idea. And I kind of started watching it, and, it was, for its time, it wasn't horrible, but, and it actually kind of stands up. I'll actually still watch it today. But some of the effects are questionable and all that. Even Tom Savini, who did the visual effects in that, has, had a few regrets and stuff. Was able to talk to him once and see a seminar where he talked. But the point is that when I started watching it, I had no idea of what was going on. So, there's the opening scene where I guess, things are falling apart, the dead are coming back to life and this and that and eating the flesh of the living. And it's just like, oh, wow, okay, that's something new. I had never seen it before. So it was, relatively new for me anyway. But then there was the scene where I guess a bunch of SWAT team members break into a boarded up apartment complex, and you see a bunch of people being shot and this and that and headshots. But you also see like these zombies like taking bites out of people. And from the first time I saw it, I was like, I was at the same time horrified and mesmerized, and I can't explain it any other way. And from that point on, the film had me, and I watched it twice. The first time I saw it, I actually watched it in two sittings. And you can look back on it now, and again, some of the special effects look relatively questionable, but at the time, it was kind of gruesome, and I felt a little. I felt kind of like I had seen like the ultimate murder in a film. When somebody gets killed with an axe or a knife, or Freddy Krueger's claws. That's one thing, but to see somebody have chunks of their flesh being torn out, being eaten or whatever, I was kind of like, ugh. But and don't take this as a symptom of some kind of psychotic dementia or something like that, because obviously zombie films are still big. The genre is still big. I always like to say that there were three movies that affected me, in my childhood: Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Dawn of the Dead, because all three of them had an emotional impact that stayed with me and still stays with me to this day. When I see the films, I still kind of remember my first impressions of all of them. So, yeah. And from that point on, when I saw Dawn of the Dead, I made it a point to try to find as many zombie films as I could. There were some comics that were out. They were very sort of poorly drawn. Vince Locke did a series called Dead World, which was probably the most thought out zombie comic back in the day, obviously before Robert Kirkman came out with The Walking Dead. But Dead World was the name of the original comic, but that came out like every 2 months, and it was kind of really hard to find. And even to this day, you'll see single issues in comic stores in the back issue section, but you'll never see all of them. And I have a few of them. I did find the omnibus that collects, or there are 2 volumes that collect every episode or every issue of Dead World, and I bought those and kind of read them, and they sort of play out a little bit like The Walking Dead in a lot of ways. But there were some differences that Vince Locke put into his book. He put in a smart zombie that actually rides a motorcycle and looks like Eddie from the Iron Maiden album covers and stuff like that. And it was kind of the first variation on a zombie theme that I saw. And there have been many more ever since. But really, Dead World was the only comic there for a while that I was like, I really wish that they would put more out. And then, of course, I actually lucked out and was able to get the first 4 issues of The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman, art by Tony Moore, and I was hooked. And I bought the issues ever since and stuff. And it was the first time that I think the zombie genre was taken seriously in comics. There were a few that tried to emulate what The Walking Dead did, but they really did it after the fact. They never, before that it was like, can you, draw a half decent skull? Fine, we'll do a zombie comic, that kind of thing, And, there may be some good zombie comics out there pre-Walking Dead. I never found any in all my travels in that. But, I would try to watch every movie that I could that had zombies in it. And some of them were, kind of hokey, and some of them were good. I love the 28 Weeks Later series. Return of the Living Dead. I actually have a soft spot in my heart for that movie, only because if the zombie apocalypse ever occurs, and it's not going to, kids, don't worry about it. But if it ever occurs and the zombies are like the zombies from Return of the Living Dead, we are hosed because you can't kill them even with a headshot. It's the craziest thing. So, yeah, and like I said, some other good zombie films are The Crazies, which isn't really a zombie film, and to kind of backtrack, I understand that 28 Days Later is not technically a zombie film. It is all the zombies in it, if you will, are people who are infected. They're not dead. They're not the living dead technically. They're infected. I get that. But the concept and the story, I thought, was really well done. So, leave a comment below, but I stand by my decision. Even the remake of Dawn of the Dead, I thought, had its moments. There was this whole big backlash about fast-moving zombies as opposed to slow-moving zombies. But, that had a lot to do with the fact that people who put out zombie films kind of wanted to put their own take on it. The typical zombie dies, comes back to life, and then, like I said, eats, flesh and whatnot. But if you're bitten by a zombie and you can't cut off the limb or whatever, you die from infection and become a zombie. And there are that's kind of the basis of it. That's pretty obvious. I mean, like I said, zombies are pretty well known in the pop culture and stuff like that. But there have been all kinds of variations over the years. Like I said, in Return of the Living Dead, you had zombies that you couldn't kill, even with a hit through the brain or whatever, and they ate brains. And, the infected, they didn't necessarily eat your flesh. They just destroyed everything that they came into contact with because they, had the rage virus or whatever. But one bite, one little bit of exposure to blood or saliva or something like that would give you the rage virus and you would become a zombie. In the case of the movie The Crazies, it was basically a waterborne virus that turned you insane and caused you just to basically psychotically kill people and stuff like that. So a lot of variations, but I've grown to love them all, I guess, throughout the years. So let me know what you think. What's your favorite zombie movie? I didn't mention The Walking Dead. Walking Dead is a great show. There were moments of good and bad episodes, I guess. But tell me your favorite zombie film, your favorite zombie book, your favorite zombie show or movie or what have you. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much to everybody who is watching this. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and like and share the video. Take care, and like I said, this is Gus the Zombie, and next week I will have another episode out. Maybe I'll do another zombie. Maybe I'll do something completely different. Maybe I'll do another Star Wars. Don't know. You got to tune in to find out. So take care, have a good week, and I will see you next time. But first, I need to fill this in real quick and change that and correct that because I kind of messed it up. So enjoy. Have a good week. I got to fix that now too. So have a good week.